I had always been a light sleeper. As a child, it was easy to wake me up. And even now, I still couldn't sleep through the night without wearing earplugs. However, there was one sound I wasn't sensitive to. I could sleep through my own screams in the middle of the night. Even the slightest noise would do the trick. It didn't help that my parents were loud and would fight every other day. I sat bolt upright in bed, heart racing. I turned on my bedside lamp and scanned the room for the source of the noise, but everything seemed fine. There was no wind outside and all the windows and doors were shut tight. So I slept with my ears permanently plugged with earwax. That also made me quite sensitive to sounds when I was older. I opened the door and shone the light in, but nothing was in there except for my clothes. On the other side, it read, "At 3:12, it will scream, releasing all its might." I frowned, confused by the cryptic message. Then I noticed something. Confused, I closed the door and got back into bed. Had whatever was in the box been under my bed the whole time? It was 3:11 a.m., and in exactly 1 minute, whatever was in that box would start screaming. What then? Would I be in danger? Was this some kind of sick joke? Suddenly, the hair on the back of my neck stood on end and I shivered. Something was definitely up. Why would someone leave a scary note with a box full of screeches under someone's bed? But the darkness wasn't empty. Hundreds of tiny figures seemed to materialize out of the blackness, each one holding a small blade. However, I couldn't help but glance towards the closet every few seconds. Were those really demons? What was this box doing under my bed, and who put it there? The cuts on my arms weren't bad, just a few shallow gashes that wouldn't leave a permanent scar. But my face was a different story. Every time I heard a creak in the house, I jumped. My bedroom door had been shut when I went to bed, and now it was wide open. I stared back at myself in the mirror, horrified. Who would do this to me? And how did they know so much about me? I spent the day throwing myself into my work, but my mind was constantly on the demons. "Are you coming in tonight?" he asked. I paused. I had been scheduled to work tonight, but I had completely forgotten about it. The hinges on the door moaned in the draft, and the rocking chair in the corner of the room began to rock gently back and forth. Maybe I should move out of the house. If demons could find me there, then surely they could find me anywhere else too. I hoped my boss didn't suspect that I was trying to avoid working tonight. After hanging up the phone, I went back to work. But nothing happened. I screamed and stumbled backwards, knocking the box full of screeches off my desk. I kept having nightmares about demons chasing me through the halls of my house. I froze when I realized what time it was and what that meant. It was happening again. And every time I dreamed that I escaped them, I would wake up with a gasp. I was so preoccupied that I nearly jumped out of my skin when my phone rang. I grabbed the wooden box full of screeches and flung it at the creatures. I stood there for a moment, panting heavily. Then I looked at the box in my hands and smiled. Maybe now I would finally get some sleep. They screamed in agony as they were cut to pieces by the tiny pieces of paper. As it hit the ground, it burst open and hundreds of tiny pieces of paper flew everywhere. I scrambled backwards, tripping over my blanket in the process. The nails on a chalkboard sound started up again, and I could hear it coming from under my bed. I tried to get up, but the figures were upon me, their blades digging into my skin. I opened the door and sure enough, the horde of demons was waiting for me. Now that I knew what time it was, I knew that in less than 12 hours I would be alone in my room with the box of screams. And who even kept a box full of screeches under their bed in the first place? It was the reason why I never ended up going to clubs or anything like that. Finally, the time came for me to go home. I drove home slowly, taking my time so that I wouldn't have to be home alone in the dark. I froze when I realized it was coming from under my bed. I sat there for a moment, heart pounding, unsure of what to do next. Should I call the police? They believe me if I told them that? I had been attacked by creatures from a parallel dimension that lived in my closet and manifested whenever a box of scratches was opened after midnight. I doubted it. When it hadn't, I did the only thing I could think of and reached under the bed to try and figure out what was making the noise. I quickly pulled it out from under the bed and shone the light on it. It was a small wooden box, about the size of a shoebox. I switched off the lamp and squeezed my eyes shut, trying to make the awful sound go away. But it just kept getting louder and more intense. All I found was a single sheet of paper inside. I unfolded it and saw that there was writing on both sides. That soy was extra surprised the other night when I woke up to what sounded like nails on a chalkboard. The nails on a chalkboard noise happened again, and I looked towards the closet. Maybe a bird had somehow gotten trapped inside. Just as I started to calm down, the noise happened again, this time closer. Then it stopped. I waited a few seconds, hoping whatever was under my bed had gone away. It felt like forever, but it was probably only about a minute before my hand brushed against something. Confused, I walked over to my desk and placed the box down. I opened it, but it was empty. On one side it said, "Beware the screecher after midnight, for it will bring you pain." It said 3:12, the same time that I had woken up. My mind raced with thoughts, but I tried to focus on the more pressing matter at hand. Suddenly, my bedroom door creaked open, making me jump. Startled, I looked towards the door and gasped. But these things weren't caused by the wind. I knew that because the window beside my bed was firmly shut. As the clock struck 3:12, the rocking in the corner of the room increased in speed, and the door slowly began to close. I watched in horror as the door closed the rest of the way, and darkness filled my room. They swarmed towards me, their eyes glowing red in the darkness, and then they vanished. So instead, I did the logical thing and got into bed, pulling the covers over my head. And even though I was scared out of my wits, I couldn't help but feel curious. When morning finally came, I got up and went to the bathroom to look at the damage. There were hundreds of tiny cuts all over my cheeks, forehead, and neck. As I went about my morning routine, I couldn't stop thinking about the demon attack. But maybe I was overreacting. I decided to wait until nighttime to see if the demons would come back. Would they come back tonight? How would I defend myself? And what would they want from me? I looked at the screen and saw that it was my boss. Sure, I lied. As the hours passed, I started to feel a sense of dread. I tried to shake off the feeling, but the longer the day went on, the worse I felt. I parked my car and hurried inside. I flipped on all the lights, but it didn't help. The room still seemed dark and oppressive. As I was getting ready for bed, I kept glancing at the closet, half expecting the door to swing open and reveal the horde of demons waiting for me. I got into bed and tried to distract myself by watching TV, but my eyes were droopy, and it didn't take long before I was fast asleep. However, I didn't sleep well. Then it happened again. I woke up at 3:12 in the morning. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination, but I knew that wasn't true. This time I didn't even bother looking. I just got out of bed and went to the closet. This time I was prepared. With a final screech, they all vanished.